Hi everyone, and welcome back. This is Azure Greg here, and tonight I'm going to be chatting to Andy Cutler about Fabric data warehousing. There we go. Hi Andy, how are you, sir?
Hey Gregor, nice to see
No,
you again. I'm doing really well, thank you very much. How about you?
Yeah, I'm good. I've not spoken to you for a wee while, so I'm catching up with people by doing this streaming stuff. So it's good.
I did think the streaming, the streaming videos was just an opportunity for you to catch up with lots of old friends over the last few weeks.
You found me out.
And I can see that you've scheduled probably another 2 months worth of streams.
I've got another 20, I think. Yes.
Yeah, already out into the distance as well. No, it's good to see you again. And thanks for inviting me on as well.
Yeah, no, thanks very much. So the reason why I wanted to speak to you, because I've been watching your YouTube stuff and I haven't really done too much data stuff recently. The last thing I think I was playing about with was Synapse. Now we've got Fabric come out, which I had absolutely no idea about. So I don't really do data that much. So I wanted to come on and I'll have you on and pick your brain about this. And I know you wanted to do some demos as well. So first question I have is, we had Azure Synapse come along and it was a big thing at Ignite and it was all this magnificent new product. What's the difference between, where's Fabric heading? Is that a new service? Is it an addition to the existing service? So talk me through what that is, if you can.
Yeah, because it's like it's condensing it all into a nutshell. I mean, like the first thing, you know, when Fabric was announced at Build, which was the tail end of May 2023. So we're, what, 2 months? You know, it was sort of about 8 or 9 weeks out. You know, lots of people have been on the private preview, so there was a huge, big explosion of content, right? Both from Microsoft themselves. I mean, they did I have to say, a really excellent job of getting all that documentation together, you know, for release date, plus all the blogs that went out across all the different areas. And one of the things that got me was, you know, being sort of drip fed week by week over the last few months about Fabric, how much there actually was to it when you were confronted with
a whole lot.
Announcement and the actual release. So there's tons and tons of stuff out there from loads of people all about what is Fabric, you know, their thoughts and their ideas. But in a nutshell, this is Microsoft taking Synapse Analytics, evolving it into a software as a service platform, so we can dive into all those, you know, all those bits and pieces in a bit, and essentially wrapping it, or wrapping the Power BI look and feel around those experiences. So data engineering and data warehousing and real-time streaming, and you know, and all of that. And I did make a joke at the time that Synapse Analytics, that was the service that was unifying several other services.
That's what I thought.
But you know, so there was Power BI integration, and to be honest with you, I didn't ever really see many people building reports or data sets within the Synapse Analytics environment or the studio itself. It was cool that you could do it, but you know, I didn't really see much need for that. But then, you know, you integrated
Data Factory.
What was called dedicated SQL pools. So, you know, the Azure data warehouse service. We got the new serverless SQL pools to, you know, query data in the data lake, and we got pipelines. So we got Data Factory put in there. So that was the unifying product. That was the product that brought everything together.
I was confused when Fabric came out because I thought that was the thing that was unifying them all. So I was a bit like, "What's this?"
Well, so now with Fabric, you're not only unifying the components that Synapse Analytics was made of, as you know, was made up of, but you're also including the, you know, Power BI properly.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, you're including all of the Power BI components in its native environment. I mean, I'm doing it a little bit of a disservice by just saying, "Hey, it's Synapse put in, but
there's more to it, obviously.
There is, a massively enhanced SQL engine in there that was built from serverless. So the serverless engine now runs both the data warehousing experience within Fabric, but also the SQL endpoint experience where you can query the data in a lakehouse. So really, and one of the other most important thing about it is it's now software as a service. So it's yet another layer of abstraction away from servers, away from configuration. So, within Synapse Analytics, you've got the opportunity to create Spark pools, different configurations. You can create dedicated SQL pools. You can create Data Explorer pools, KQL for real-time streaming, and basically you've got control over those, over those services. So essentially platform as a service. So now in Fabric, that's pretty much been taken away from you. So what you need to worry about when you're dealing with all these different services within Fabric is the compute.
Okay.
Because ultimately everything is just being run on a Fabric capacity. So now we're in the world of understanding capacity units or CUs.
Oh, is this a new thing? Capacity unit? I've not heard of that one.
Yes, capacity units, which is like, again, think of Azure SQL database with the concept of the DTU. Yeah. Where what Microsoft is saying is, don't worry about trying to understand how many cores this is or how many processes this is. Just test your workloads and work out what DTUs you're going to need. I mean, there's, I remember at the years and years ago at the time, someone did a really good blog post where they tried to work out, core assignments against DTUs. We've had it with dedicated SQL pools with the concept of DWUs, data warehouse units. Where
it's just like these names, don't they?
Exactly. Yeah, where we did have some hard and fast numbers in terms of RAM. Yeah. So each DWU tier, you got 60 gig of RAM per 100. So you could understand memory capacity, but then you were kind of left to work out yourself what the compute would relate to in terms of processes and cores and all that kind of stuff. I mean, you could look at how many concurrent queries that you could run and maybe equate that to V cores. But so now we're in the world of CUs, of capacity units. And so, for example, if you were running a Power BI Premium P1 capacity, that now relates to a Fabric F64, which is basically 64 CUs, right? This sort of capacity units. And really what capacity units are, they're just this unit of measurement to define how much compute you're going to get allocated
to run your workload.
Yeah, but what Microsoft is saying is that if you've got like the lowest level of CUs, so you can actually create an Azure, what they call an F SKU through the Azure portal. Yeah, so you go into Azure, you create that F SKU, you can then assign that capacity, or you can assign Power BI workspaces to that, to that F SKU. You can create one as low as 2 CUs that will cost you about, £250 a month. So what Microsoft is saying that actually you'll be able to run a workload and it should take the same amount of time compared to, a higher capacity. Yeah. So actually the workloads can run the same. The problem is you won't be able to do very many of them. Yeah. You're not going to be able to do a lot of operations at the same time.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So this is where this sort of CU concept has come from. And what I love actually on Twitter, Mim, who posts a lot about comparing and contrasting cloud data warehouse platforms does a lot of calculations based on these CUs, these capacity units, to actually work out how much a certain operation is costing you.
Right. Okay.
Which is really good. So
yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah. So you've got a and we'll you know, we might dive into that towards the end. We've got a capacity reporting app within Power BI, within Fabcric, that we can have a look at workloads and see exactly what capacity units
you're using
are actually being used. So yeah, so really in a nutshell, Fabcric is Microsoft's, they're bringing in the kind of next gen Synapse experience into Fabcric, but now aligning all these personas. So we've got the we've got the Power BI persona, we've got the data engineering persona, the data warehousing, machine learning, those sorts of things. So, and one of the interesting things is that when you look at the profile of data teams, sometimes there are data teams that all work together. So there's analysts, there's data engineers, and they work very closely together. Well, with Fabcric, you've now got one interface where everybody can work within the familiar environment, and that's that is quite attractive to a lot of people, especially a lot of especially a lot of execs in companies that are like, well, we would love everyone to be working through one experience to to collaborate and share.
Cool. So is Fabcric in private preview or is it public preview? Where is it at right now?
So where it's at right now is we are very much in public preview land.
Public preview. Okay.
Yeah.
And so the breaking left, right, and centre, is it still definitely in preview?
Yes. Yeah. So actually, I did a blog post a little while ago called Microsoft Fabcric in production, which was essentially a list of the things that I feel are pretty essential to go into production. Now Microsoft is targeting towards the end of the year for general availability, but you know what, it's one of these things where you bake it and it's going to be ready when it's ready, in my view, right?
Oh, I think the internet's gone.
Public preview, which means it's not officially supported. So by all means, if you're looking to use Fabcric, if Fabcric is something that is interesting to your organization, by all means engage with Microsoft, engage with consultancies, engage with people that are working with Fabcric to understand what it can do. Start to work through proof of concepts, develop for it, test. Fair enough, but it is nowhere near ready.
It's not ready for production.
For production, no.
Okay. And how long do you think that might take for production? Is there any estimates and timelines, or not sure?
We've been told towards the end of the year.
End of the year. Okay, that's fine. Because normally they kind of give you like a rough time frame. Always rough, obviously.
Well, that's quite funny because there was on a completely separate project with a separate component that I won't name. It's been in preview for 3 years, and I asked, "Is this ever going to come out of preview and go into public? Go out of public preview and go into general availability?" So I think we're very much, they're very much targeting, towards the end of the year for GA. But how many of those components that I feel need to be in place before it goes general availability is there? So, for example, the security model, right? So, at some stage there is going to be quite a fine grain security model embedded within Fabric.
Yeah.
You know, it would be really good if that was in place. Yeah.
So is it not? Okay, it's not at the moment.
Probably would be essential.
Yeah, I would think so. Yeah.
To be in place rather than the sort of workspace driven security mechanism that's in place, at the moment. But yeah, there's lots to come. Yeah, there's lots to come in there. And my real focus is on the sort of warehousing side of things.
Yeah.
The SQL warehousing. So, a little later on we'll go through the warehousing in in a demo, and again, we can jump in and ask questions and all of that. But I wanted to call out a couple of the sort of the main areas in data engineering and data warehousing within Fabric, which is the concept of the lakehouses and the warehouses. So we're not in a world anymore in Fabric where we're talking about databases.
Yeah, okay. So it's now one of
Yeah, it's a lake house and it's a warehouse.
So from my reading, it used to be that warehouses were the big thing, and now it's lake houses. Is that right, or did I get that wrong?
Say again.
When I was reading about it not that long ago, it was basically warehouses weren't as cool as lake houses. Were lake houses not the new best thing?
Hey, lake houses. Yes, they are the new the new thing. And what Microsoft have done is to allow both types of workloads to coexist. So actually, when we go through the warehouse side of things, I'm actually using a lake house to get some data.
Okay.
But the personas, in play in terms of lake houses and warehouses are, if you're a shop that is heavily into Spark, you love Python, you've got your your procedurally generated objects where you can go and grab a whole bunch of data and then do some data quality checks, do some data typing checks, and then load it into a destination, and you've written it in 20 lines of Python to be able to crunch hundreds of tables worth of data and load it all. Then brilliant. Synapse Fabric is there for you, so you can create a lake house, you can bring in your Spark code, Python, Scala, well, SQL as well. Do your data engineering workloads as you would do in Databricks or Synapse Spark, and go through that, well, what is now quite a ubiquitous pattern, the medallion architecture. You're familiar with that whole concept of we've got the raw data, we've got the cleansed data, and then we've got the curated data.
Was that bronze, the bronze, silver, gold type thing?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Now, of course, what that also does is that does in some ways force people to think, well, there's only 3 layers, because there's the whole, the three medals there. But it's a little bit more nuanced than that, depending on if you want to keep total raw data, and then raw data in a queryable form in bronze, and then some silver data in terms of your your cleansed, and then gold. And I think it's Chris Wagner actually that talks about, and I'm going to get it wrong, but then he talks about the diamond layer after that, after gold as well. So
what's that all about then?
I don't know. I think Chris has got a couple of videos on that. But the point is that yes, we've got this medallion architecture of a series of stages that data can go through from its total raw untransformed state all the way through to it being, you know, fed into reports, dashboards, machine learning models, you know, output back to applications, you know, whatever. And then on the other side, we've got warehouses. So if you're a SQL shop, you know, if you're comfortable with using SQL, you've built frameworks using SQL, that's what you like to use. So if you're coming from, you know, existing Microsoft BI solutions, SQL Server, things like that, well, you know, don't worry, you know, Fabcric has got you covered. You can bring your SQL-based workloads as well, all driven by one engine. And this was the major point of contention with Synapse.
Okay.
In that we had two SQL engines. We had dedicated SQL pools and we had serverless SQL pools, and, you know, endless blog posts and videos and questions about what's the difference between the two SQL services. What should I use in what scenario? Now, of course, great news for consultants, right? Because they could then
don't
say,
have that problem.
yeah, exactly. They could say, well, you know, we can, you know, we can tell you what the difference is, and, you know, we can show you what you know, which one you should use in which scenario. So, you know, what Microsoft have done with Fabcric is, you know, the right thing, which is one SQL engine. So it doesn't matter whether you're building a warehouse, you're using the same SQL engine as if you're querying a lakehouse using the SQL endpoint.
Okay.
Which is good. Yeah, which we'll see. You know, we'll see both of those as well. But the important thing here is that both the storage mechanism for the warehouse and the storage mechanism for the lakehouse is Delta. So it ultimately Parquet files. Yeah. So under the hood. Now, in Lakehouses, you can create tables using other file formats as well. But it's, you know, basically it's recommended that if you're going to create tables within a lakehouse, that you do it
using Parquet
as a Delta table, because you're going to get the special source, the improvements that Microsoft have made with Delta.
Is this the time tracking thing where you can go back in time and stuff like that? Is that part of that?
Well, so that's one of the benefits of using Delta, but that's been a feature of Delta for, you know, quite a few years. You know, that's been one of the benefits of using Delta for a while, which is, you can go back to a point in time and query data as it was
back then,
you know, yesterday, last week, whatever. So that hasn't changed, but there have been optimizations with Delta, you know, over the years. You know, one of the improvements was Z ordering, which is essentially an optimization process that you can run on Delta files that helps data retrieval, you know, fast data retrieval. It sort of clusters similar data close together. What Microsoft have done in Fabcric is introduced a new optimization called V ordering.
Oh dear. Okay.
Which again, yeah, exactly. Which again, you know, it's another optimization method, which when you load data into a lakehouse table, into a lakehouse Delta table, you're going to get the benefit of this V ordering. And one of Fabric's latest, or one of Fabric's sort of main additions is another connection type between Power BI and the data.
Okay.
So at the moment, you know, with Power BI, we've got, what have we got? We've got import, So, you connect to a data source and you import the data into, Power BI's own VertiPack engine, so it'll compress the data, or you can connect it in direct query, which is it won't bring any data in, it won't import any data, it's just going to push queries down to the data source and return the data. Benefits of import is it's fast. Benefits of direct query is there's lower latency if data gets updated, in the source systems. But, with import, you've got to set, you've got to trigger a refresh schedule. So you've got to, take the time to import the data. Yes, you can set up incremental refresh and all that, but you've got to move the data again from somewhere into somewhere. Benefits of direct query is that as soon as any data changes in the source, it's made available. However, your source has kind of got to be optimized for direct query, because Power BI can get quite busy and quite chatty when it's sending queries down to a data source. So you could end up flooding, a data source, and it's not the quickest, and also you get a subset of the features as well. So with Direct Lake, which is the new, the new feature that Microsoft have added, the marketing spiel is that you get import performance, but direct query latency.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So when data changes in the source, you're going to see it reflected in a Power BI report. Now it's far more nuanced, and limited than that.
Okay. Interesting though. So is that what the V is? That's what it gives you.
I think so. Yeah, I think it's either it'd either be like the V ordering will stand for something like VertiPack or vertical or something like that. But ultimately there's lots of clever stuff going under the going on under the hood when it's taking the data from the underlying compressed Parquet files and sort of caching it into the Power BI engine. But ultimately, we have that functionality, but that Direct Lake functionality is currently really only enabled in the Lakehouse. So in the warehouse, we don't have the Direct Lake functionality yet. So we're promised it. So that's going to be coming. But yeah, so I think the main thing is that ultimately we're boiling down to the fact that it's the same SQL engine. Same syntax. So luckily we're just dealing with one engine that we can work with both a warehouse and a SQL endpoint. So I'm wondering whether it's worth us jumping into a demo and just kind of running through what it looks like, really.
Yeah, sure. What I'll do is if you share your screen, I'll remove us so you can see the screen a bit bigger. So I think you just need to go to present and then share screen down at the bottom.
Okay. So I'm going to share an entire screen. I'll share screen 1.
Okay, so that looks like that. Is that the one you want to share?
That's the one. Let me.
So what I'll do is I'll take us out so it looks bigger. So I'll do that so you can see the screen. See the bit at the bottom where it says sharing? You can just click hide if you want. Yeah,
there we go. Yeah.
Cool.
Brilliant.
Yeah, that looks good. I can read that.
Yeah, we can read that. So I think a couple of things worth calling out is that, and I can share all these links on on Twitter and LinkedIn afterwards, is that we've got quite a lot of comprehensive documentation within Learn. So we've got the whole data warehousing documentation as it is in there, so you can get straight in, create a warehouse, create a table, ingest some data, all the way down to, and I love to go down and start to look at things like statistics and workload management and all that good stuff. So you can get in there and you can understand the service through the documentation itself. But we've also got some modules. We've got some learn modules, so we've got, a whole getting started with data warehouses in Microsoft Fabcric. So we got, a module with 9 units. So there you go. You can understand the fundamentals, query and transform, monitor the data warehouse. So that's really good, as well.
Nice. I need to have a play with that. Definitely need to do these ones. Yeah.
Obviously, a little shout out for my own blog, serverlesssql.com, where I've got a Fabcric category. And what I tend to do is I tend to try and lift up the floorboards and have a little look underneath and see what's going on.
That's a good analogy.
It's because I don't know. Sometimes there's an itch that I need to scratch in terms of understanding something. So I'll get in there and I'll have a little look around, and sometimes Microsoft will say to me, "Yeah, that isn't quite supported yet. So can you wait?" And and that sort of stuff. But I can't help it. I can't help it. So the first thing is that within Power BI. So if I just go back to Power BI itself, is that ultimately you can you start with Fabcric through Power BI.
Okay.
So we can go up into the settings, we can go into the admin portal, and we've got the top level tenant setting, which is Microsoft Fabcric, right? So users can create Fabcric items.
Okay.
The great thing here is, yes, you can enable it, but you can just enable it for certain security groups.
I see.
Yeah, so that is probably one of, this is what I love about a lot of the settings within the admin portal, is that you can enable them, but only enable them for certain users. So, if you're going to set up your, security groups, to only
that and add people to it.
Yeah, exactly. Add to the security group and then add it to there. But then it's not going to do you much good unless, let's have a little look. We're going to search down here. Is that you need a capacity. So you actually need to run a capacity within Fabcric. Now I can't remember where. Oh, there we go. So you can enable Fabcric. Okay, assign it to specific user groups. A lot of organizations really only have one tenant, right? Because it's the top level. So if you want to try out Fabcric, you can do it by just assigning it to to certain security groups. If you want to go on the trial, then users can try Microsoft Fabcric paid features, so you can enable that, and again, maybe specify that same security group that you specified before. So that'll give you the ability to see these personas down the bottom left. Yeah. So we've got, Power BI, Data Factory, data engineering, data science, data warehouse, which we'll go into, and real-time analytics, right? So people won't see that switch unless, they're enabled to see Fabcric, Fabcric items.
Makes sense.
So actually, Kevin Chant has a really good blog around how to get up and running with a Fabcric trial, and he talks about using the Microsoft 365 developer program. So you can get like a 90-day trial where you get like an E5 license, and then you can you'd be able to access Fabcric and enable a trial through there. So really good. But if we go back into Power BI, so ultimately, we've enabled Fabcric, right? So, you know, we've got a trial capacity, and like, as you can see here, I mean, myself, you know, I've got, you know, a trial, I've got, you know, a couple of months left on that. And creating Fabric items is like creating Power BI items. So if you're used to Power BI, you know, you can get used to creating Fabric items. So if we create a workspace, so right, so let's say we're going to go to workspaces, create a new workspace, right? Call it Azure Greg, and then we can select a capacity. Now, at the moment, you know, I've got a trial capacity, so that's the one that's visible there.
Yep.
However, I do have some, and let's go in right now. I do actually have some Fabric Azure capacities. Oh, okay. Cool. Let's try that again. So let's have a look at Fabric. Yep. So I've got, and what I'll do is I'll actually let me enable or start up one of those capacities. So I'll resume one of the capacities. Right, that one is at the lowest SKU.
Okay.
Yeah. So if I just go to my change size, right, there you go.
Oh, yeah.
F2, 2 capacity units, £249 a month. So if I ran that SKU for a whole month and didn't pause it, it would cost me about 250 quid. But I can pause the capacity, so I can do some development. I can pause the capacity and come back. You know, I think it's, you know, what does that work out as? Like 33p an hour, something like that. So I don't necessarily have to go through the process of buying, you know, a premium tenant, you know, a premium capacity for Fabric. I can, you know, I can use an Azure SKU, which anyone that's, you know, used to Power BI embedded, you know, will kind of be the same. But anyway, so we've got our trial capacity. So, you know, think of that as the Fabric capacity, and there we go. There's our workspace. And if I want to, I can create new, or actually switch personas and go to the data warehousing persona. And, you know, let's go to Azure Greg again. And then we could create, you know, any number of artifacts that we wanted to do. So let's, you know, let's create a warehouse just to show how easy it is, right? So we'll say Azure Greg warehouse. We create that, and it's going to launch into the development experience for the warehouse. So we'll dive into a warehouse that I've already created.
I didn't think you'd be doing this in Power BI though. That's interesting.
Well, this is the thing. This is the thing is, you know, instead of, so it's like, it's the other way around. So in Synapse Analytics, you could sort of bring in, you know, the ability to create Power BI reports within Azure Studio, whereas now you're in Power BI and you can create warehouses and lakehouses and do data engineering, but yet within the experience that, you know, anyone familiar with Power BI, you know, has been using for years. You know, it's the same experience. You know, and there we go. There's our warehouse, and we've got 3 tabs at the 3 tabs at the bottom, which I'll go through in, you know, a pre. It's not a pre-built warehouse. I've just got the scripts ready because no one wants to see me type. No, you know, no one really wants to see me type in SQL. So if we go to the workspaces, so I've got a workspace that I've created, which is the marketing department, right? It's just a development workspace. And in here, I've already created 2 sets of artifacts. I've created a lake house, So I get a Lakehouse and I get this SQL endpoint. I also get this data set. So I kind of get a pre-generated Power BI data set. I think it's been fed back to Microsoft. It would be really good if you could create a Lakehouse or a warehouse and not have that data set created by default.
Okay.
But we will look at that data set in the warehouse. So, I've got this Lakehouse that I've already created, and I've already got this warehouse that I've created. Now, one of the things that is really, really useful within Fabcric is the concept of being able to access data in one lake, in its, data lake storage from any workspace.
Okay.
So, for example, right, I have a Lakehouse in another workspace, and I've already loaded a bunch of data into it. So I've got some raw data, I've got some reference data, I've got loads of data in this kind of central Lakehouse, location, which is in another workspace.
Okay.
Right. But ultimately, I want to use some of that data to build a warehouse for the marketing department.
Go ahead.
So first thing, I've just created a Lakehouse. And if I open up that Lakehouse, I've used a really nifty trick within Fabcric, which is to create a shortcut.
Okay.
So all a shortcut does, it's just a reference to the source data. So it doesn't copy the data itself. So for example, I can say new shortcut.
And then point it to a different workbook.
Yeah. I can connect to an existing Data Lake Gen 2 account. I can connect to Amazon S3, or if it's in one lake, I can connect to one lake. There's all of my available, warehouses and lake houses that I can reference data from. So I can go into, my Lakehouse 1, and then
could you do that? Could you do that in Synapse? No,
not
really.
No. It's you weren't able to just sort of reference the data. I mean, you could create external tables and views within serverless SQL, but in terms of dedicated SQL pools, no, it was you could reference data that was in a data lake. But what shortcuts allows you to do, it allows you to bring in or make available data for querying, but keep it in a central location without moving it around. So ultimately, what I've done is I've created a shortcut in my Lakehouse to, 3 lots of data. So, some dates, some product data, and some data that I want to generate some facts with, right? But my Lakehouse in marketing, all it is, it's like, think of it as a shell. Think of it as just a connectivity shortcut to the data that's in another workspace.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So I can curate. I can basically create a Lakehouse and only bring in certain data from somewhere else without actually having to copy that data.
That's pretty cool.
Okay. Now the thing is, though, Lakehouses can cover a whole session, in themselves. But suffice to say that all I've really done is just created a Lakehouse and referenced 3 tables from a central Lakehouse, that I can go and grab some data from. So if I go back into the workspace, then I've got my warehouse. Right, so let's open up the warehouse. And let me just expand that. So in the warehouse, yes, we're working predominantly, we're working only with SQL, right? So, in the concept of a Lakehouse, we're able to use SQL, but we're able to use Spark, Python, Scala, SQL within Spark. But within warehouses, we are dealing just with the SQL side of things.
Yeah.
So let me just expand my create objects. Okay. Now, I think there is it might not happen, but there is a little bit of a bug that keeps on flicking the query window back to a table. So I'm hoping it's not going to happen here.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. Hey, it's still in public preview. But the one thing when you're looking at SQL within Fabcric is that on the face of it, you're dealing with SQL. You're dealing with a SQL engine, but this is not SQL Server, right? SQL Server is, a product that's matured over like 4 decades now.
Yeah, a long time. Yeah.
Feature rich, all sorts of different types of data workloads you can bring to SQL Server. When you come to looking at Fabcric SQL, when you're comparing and contrasting the engines, you can't really compare SQL Server to, let's say, the Fabcric SQL engine. It's more appropriate to compare Fabcric SQL with other cloud warehouse and lakehouse products and vendors like Databricks, like Snowflake DB, Dremio, Google BigQuery, all those sorts of things, because it's more aligned with what they do than SQL Server is. Yeah.
Makes
so
sense.
when you look at creating schemas and tables and inserting data, yes, it feels like SQL Server, but it's its different animal now. Yeah, it's its own thing that's more appropriate to be in the category of cloud warehousing with Databricks and that sort of thing. So look, we can create some tables. So I'm going to create my fact table. You scroll down, I've got a product dimension. I've got my event type dimension. Here we go. Oh, is it gonna? No, that's fine. I've got a date dimension, right? So I'm just gonna drop table. Okay, so I'm gonna ignore the constraints. I've got a blog post coming on the constraints. So let's have a look at the schemas. So DW, look at the tables. Let's refresh that. We're missing the event type. Let's try that again. Refresh that. So we've got a fact table and we've got 3 dimension tables. All right. So browse down. What I'll do is I'll actually start loading the fact first. So I've got this query. So actually what I'll do is I'm just going to do a select top 10.
Are you loading that data in from the other workbook?
I'm loading it in from the Lakehouse.
Which is in... Right, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. But that Lakehouse it's just a shortcut.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this table that I'm loading from, it exists in like a central Lakehouse where, yes, I am now, I'm now physically moving data into a warehouse, but I haven't had to go through any other steps. I haven't, all I've done is I've just referenced that particular, central Lakehouse location with a shortcut in this workspace. So look, I can just select top 10. Let's run that for a few seconds. Get some data back. And
so
then
Mark's got a question here. He's asking, why load in the Lakehouse?
So let me just run that and then flick back to the DIMS. So what was the question?
Why load in the Lakehouse? Or a smiley face.
Why load from the Lakehouse?
Yeah.
Well, 2 things. So the Lakehouse is, your kind of data engineering place. The warehouse is where you go to if you're the kind of SQL-based shop where you're more comfortable working with, SQL warehousing. You've got your templates, your patterns that you want to bring into a SQL-based workload environment. But where does the warehouse get its data from? Has to get its data from somewhere. Now, the Lakehouse, a really good place where you're ingesting all of that raw data. Yeah. So the pure Lakehouse enthusiasts will, or developers, they'll have a Lakehouse created, maybe across different workspaces for, bronze, silver, gold, and then they'll be loaded and transforming across those different Lakehouses. Great. However, I can create a warehouse from that Lakehouse data. So I don't have to do anything else other than reference that Lakehouse and bring the data into a familiar SQL-based environment.
Yeah, I think his last question was probably that.
Yeah, and Dennis, no more open row set bulk stuff. Kind of sad in a way, because open row set gave you the ability to query all those different data formats where we kind of lost that. We can't do that in the Lakehouse anymore. And of course Mark has said, well, why load it into a Lakehouse? Well, hey, you can bring both workloads, right? If you love working with a Lakehouse pattern, then the Lakehouse pattern's there for you. If you want to bring it into a warehouse, warehouse is here for you. But so let's just crack on. So we're just loading that fact now. So it's probably going to finish up in a few seconds loading that. Yeah, there we go. So what have we got? 1.2 billion rows loaded into that fact table, and then we just got some dimensions, right? So I've got a dimension that I'm using some inserts into. So it's just 3 values. Again, I'm going to load a product dimension from my raw Lakehouse data. So I'm going to load into there. There we go, 606 records, and then I've got a date. Yeah. So again, I've got this. Let me just do a select. So I've got this, single date table in a Lakehouse that I can just reference multiple times if I want to bring it into, another Lakehouse or another warehouse. So let me just insert into that. And we've got our data, right? So, if I just create a new SQL query, right, then, I promised I wasn't going to type. Right, but we've got let's add the from keyword. Right, so we're gonna go 1.2 billion rows into our fact table, right? So we can connect to the warehouse using tools like Management Studio or Azure Studio, basically any SQL client where we've got this connection string.
Right.
So let's just open up trusty SSMS.
Management Studio. Gotta beat it.
There we go. Let that load up. Where are we? Where's Management Studio gone? All right. Database engine. Server name is that endpoint. Now it's probably going to ask me for MFA. But I just wanted to show the fact that, it's asking me for a password. I'll tell you what,
I'll go on a different machine.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, we'll leave that.
Okay.
We'll leave that rather than watch me, watch me fussing around with fussing around with authentication. So we've got our warehouse. I'm just going to scroll back down to the questions. So like I said, we've got these 3 tabs at the bottom. So we've got data, query, and model. So in the data tab, so I'm just going to click on data. So we can go in, we can see our schemas. Yeah, so we created that DW schema. We added some tables to it. I can click on the table and get a preview of that data. I've got view. I can create views. I can create functions. I can create stored procedures. Right. So I can bring let's say I'm migrating from an on-premise SQL server. I can bring my workload from there. If I'm looking to create a new greenfield data warehouse project, then you've got your familiar T-SQL surface area here. I can create my queries. So like I said, I've got queries here. Load DIMS, load facts, all these sorts of things. We can connect to it with Management Studio, Azure Data Studio. I have been mucking about with SSDT projects, and it's not officially supported. But like we said earlier, I love to have a little play around and see if things work. So I'm sure at some stage we'll get project support. Well, I'm hoping. Mark's on here, so that's the sort of thing that I'd love to see in there. But we've got this model tab as well. So anyone who's had a little play around with or used Power BI data marts, this is a similar experience where we're now modeling in the web, right? So we can, we've got a few minutes left where we can, create relationships between the tables. I won't do it now, but if you create foreign key relationships in the data warehouse itself, those relationships will be visualized in the model. You'll need an extra step to actually activate them, but really, really useful if you want to create your constraints in the warehouse. Helps with some query optimization as well. But yeah, so we can just now wire up our warehouse. All right. I'm going to assume you don't need to determine the relationship type. I'm going to tell you what that relationship type is.
Mark's asking you to try and show it.
Yeah, we can create that. So, why isn't that relationship active? So I'm going to activate that relationship. I can do the same with the event type. Bring that in. All right. So what's that? That's going to be one-to-many. Do. Basically, that assume referential integrity just makes sure that inner join statements are run on that source. And then date key. Let's bring in that date key now. No, I won't show it now.
It says sorry, I'm giving you a hard. It says sorry, I'm giving Andy a hard time on purpose.
The database projects? No, I haven't got time for that. Okay. Now, of course, in Power BI desktop, you can do the same thing. So did that not event date? Did that not create? We've got the ability to connect using that data hub. Using that data hub. Hang on, let's try again. What's happening here? So dim date, make this relationship, assume reference integrity, confirm. There are ambiguous paths between fact web telemetry and dim date. Fact web to dim date and dim date. Okay, I'm not really sure what's going on there. Let's go back to query. Let's go back to the model view. Okay, not sure. But then from there, if we want to build a report, click on new report.
And there's your data. Just drag it in.
And then, yeah, do what we like. Well, actually, let me go back.
There we go.
So there we go. So actually, we've got our lovely star schema that we all have in the real world. And then, yeah, so if we jump into, well, actually, yeah, so from here, you know, we can create a measure, you know, let's say, you know, total event count equals count rows from our fact web telemetry table. Let's put that 1,000 separator in, and then go into the report. And then from here, you know, we've got our event counts, so we'll bring that in. So actually, well, so I was about to make some excuses for the warehouse by saying, "Oh, we don't have direct lake yet," and all that, you know, and the other. But oh, is it?
I'm still saving.
Is it?
Look, I think a screen might have. No, I can still hear you, but
Okay.
Is the screen frozen or something?
I don't know. I think there's a little bit of latency now on. I think there's just a bit of latency now on the. Let's just refresh that. Let me just move that.
Yeah, it seems okay now.
Yeah, it's okay. All right, yeah. So a few seconds latency, that's fine. Yeah. So what I was about to say is that because, well, look at that, because the direct lake functionality, this this kind of import mode performance, but with direct query latency isn't yet enabled on the warehouse. It might take a good few seconds to get the results back, but actually we're getting them back pretty quickly.
Back straight away, yeah.
But then so from that from that warehouse, then let's say we've got the event type. Bring that on there. Move our 1 billion. So there we go. There's our event types. Oh, come on, let's stress test it. So we've got the line chart, and then let's go into dates, and let's say the date itself. Okay, that all right. It's a bit faster than I thought it was going to bring it back. Have you done anything to this, Mark? Have you turned up the warehouse service by any chance?
Press the toggle button.
Yeah, but there we go. So essentially, we've gone from creating some shortcuts in the lake house, brought it into the warehouse. So let me click on purchase products and see it kind of filtering. This is going to, oh, okay, 2 or 3 seconds. That's not bad. And there we go. So we can save. We can save. Save the report. This will be accessible in another workspace if you want to connect to the data set. But yeah, that's that's the warehousing experience, and I hope there's a lot more to come in terms of the functionality that's gonna that we're gonna get in Fabcric and warehouses. But well, what did you think, Gregor?
Yeah, no, very cool indeed. I'm still surprised you could do all that from inside PowerBI. Felt like you were inside SQL for most of that, but yeah, no, very cool.
But that's the thing. Cool, it's like Microsoft have I think they've heard the issues that Synapse represented, which were multiple SQL engines. What can you do with that? Yes, you could integrate Power BI, but it it wasn't, it wasn't an experience in which you could fully work with all of the Power BI features within. So, considering that, Power BI is, or the Power BI interface is now, well, it's ubiquitous, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I know data engineers that do a bit of data modeling. They're familiar with the Power BI interface.
Yeah.
People with machine learning experience, they're familiar with it. Data analysts, users, loads of people are familiar with the Power BI interface. So now bringing in those workload types, it makes sense. But like I said, what are we? We're not even even into August yet. I believe GA is coming at the end of the year. There's a whole bunch of stuff that needs to go into this before it's production ready. But you know what?
It looks very promising.
And it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun using, because you can get a lot out for not very much in, which I really like. So yeah, like I said, I just love getting hands on with it and working through a solution.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much for coming on, because I have not seen Fabcric up until now.
Well, there you go.
Last time I touched data stuff was Synapse. So yeah, a little bit behind the times at the moment.
Tour.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. Thanks very much. Just before we go, any last questions? Feel free, or any comments, just chuck them in chat before we go. We've got like a couple of minutes left.
As Mark said, we're not talking about Power BI anymore. We're talking about Fabcric.
Yes. Okay, so I've got a couple of links to show. So your blog is serverless SQL, sorry. So if you want to catch up with Andy's blog, go for that.
So I'll drop that in the chat. So we've got So we've got all that data warehouse.
Yeah, we've got your YouTube channel as well.
Yeah.
So I'll put that on as well.
We've got the getting started with the warehouse.
Yeah.
We've got the 60-day trial. So I showed that a little bit earlier on.
Yeah.
So there's no excuse, really.
No. I was going to, and you've also got your YouTube channel. Yeah, so I'm going to go and play a bit with that. That's for sure. I'm going to go and do the Microsoft Learn stuff.
Yes.
Mark's asking, did you mention the free trials for 60 days? I think we did.
Yes, we did earlier on. Yeah, we showed how to enable that in the portal. So you get 60 days. For some reason, I've had a 59-day trial for about 2 months. So maybe long may that continue.
Awesome. Andy, thanks very much for coming on. And thank you for doing that. If you ever want to come back on, shout, and if there's anything you want to demo or talk about, then just let me know. Same goes for everyone else. Yeah,
definitely, because there's tons of stuff on this.
Yeah, no, definitely. So if anyone else wants to come on, I don't have my link handy. I must have overrun it, but that's not a problem. Did you show the tables of Delta? Yes, we explained about that, didn't we? We talked about the Delta tables, the Parquet format.
Yeah, we explained, and I had Azure Storage Explorer open to show that the underlying table storage was Delta. We just ran out of time.
No, it's all the time you need if you want to do that now, but I don't think you've got time. Yeah, go for it if you've got it open.
Let's go. Just one last little thing. So if I present, share my screen, go to the entire screen. I couldn't disappoint.
There we go.
I couldn't disappoint Mark.
No, absolutely not.
But so, as we said earlier, One Lake, has the Data Lake Gen 2 APIs. So all those tools and services that can talk to Data Lake Gen 2, we can talk here. Could talk to Data Lake here. So if we open up my warehouse and I go into the tables section. So if we go into dates, then there we go.
Nice.
There's the Parquet file. There's the Delta log. So Microsoft are not lying when they say that it's in the Delta format. We go back to that fact table. Then we've got a whole bunch of Parquet files because there's what 1.1 billion
1.1 billion, yeah.
rows in, so it's going to distribute it across a set of Parquet files and run as I understand it, and Mark can tell me if I'm wrong. I believe there's some auto optimizing that goes on to compact those files. But there we go. So you can actually get to the Lakehouse and the warehouse storage using Storage Explorer and see the underlying Parquet files and the Delta log in in one lake.
Nice, very cool. I like it. Indeed. All right, cool. Thank you very much. Yeah, so Denise is also saying the same thing. Don't tell Andy, but he's stuck on 60 days as well. But don't want the punch.
I was going to say, just don't say anything. Just
just keep quiet.
Just carry on.
Right, that'll do us then, Andy. Thank you very much for your time. Tomorrow I have Sam Cogan on. He's going to be talking about Pulumi. So that's infrastructure as code using C# and other languages. So I'm looking forward to that as well. But Andy, thanks again. If you ever want to come on, even if you want to come on with Mark or anyone else, Kevin or anything like that, just let me know and we can set up something and you can come on and demo it.
Oh, yes.
Anything you like.
I will definitely twist Mark's arm for that one. Yes,
yeah,
let's do that.
Definitely come on. Yeah, just let me know when. Hopefully this time suits. But yeah, so I'll just play a little outro video just to say thanks for watching and then we'll call it quits. But thanks for coming on again, Andy. I appreciate that.
Oh, Gregor, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.